Hello, Reliability Gang. Welcome back to another episode of the Reliability Gang podcast. Hope everyone's keeping really well. It's been a long time since we've actually been in here together, but we're actually in the office together with a day to actually strategize and go through a lot of things. But do you know what? It's really nice sometimes when, we haven't actually done a podcast in a while, but we've been out in the field, we've been helping customers, we've been right in the thick of it. And you've been on your side quest, I've been on my own quest. And I don't think we've actually been together for a long time. So
no,
we're going to use this as an opportunity to come together and like some of the projects we've been working on, especially with data and kind of the future. We're going to try to mold our experiences together and actually hash out a really good podcast from it. Do you know what I mean?
The last few days that we've been able to have together, which has been a bit of a rarity, but it's given us chance to kind of reflect upon some of our individual, like you say, side quests, but actually how the things that you've been dealing with these customers and I've been dealing with these customers, actually they're kind of, I wouldn't say problems, but they're very similar.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, 100%. And I think as well, when we look at kind of the way that maintain reliability has evolved, we're very much into trying to be effective, and how do you be effective? Well, you've got to have a strategy and you've got to be able to understand the data and you've got to be able to understand what you're looking at and how do you create a strategy that is able to be able to cater to that strategy in the most effective way. And we understand as well that big data is coming. We've got sensors, we've got AI models now, we've got technology rapidly changing. And I remember like the first days when we first had our smartphones or camera phones. Not even smart. They weren't even smart then. They weren't even clever. Like I remember the first phone that came out with the camera. And I remember when all of our mates were taking photos and it was just pixelated, but you couldn't even make what the photo was, to be honest. It was so pixelated. But it was such an innovative thing to be able to take a photo on the phone. But how quickly that evolved, every single phone model came out after that was, you're doubling the megapixel on the phone. They used to do it by megapixels, didn't they? And that was the selling point of the phone. Like you've got a 16 megapixel camera and the next version would come out and Samsung would be battling out with their tech. It was Nokia at the time, I think, into it. I mean, obviously how things have changed. But that was a tech revolution. But how fast that move was actually crazy.
We're in a very rapid development period at the minute. I even think back to some of the older condition monitoring technology, like when thermal imaging had all the separate battery packs. We weren't too much of that. We kind of got that right at the end of coming into CM. But even that technology, I don't feel maybe the guys that were within it, I don't feel like it was moving as rapidly as what it is now. Really from the phone generation, technology has just gone ding, 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 ding.
Yeah. And even within the industry that we're in, and the thing is, because that moves so fast, and it always will, because, human innate nature is always to be able to innovate and improve. That's always what we're driven to do. And the funny thing is, on that side of things, we feel like we're improving. But on the other side of the culture side of the reasoning behind why we do maintenance and some of the effective practices, it's moving very slow. So what we've got is this very weird conundrum where you've got the technology and the ability to be able to monitor certain things moving very fast, but
businesses are slacking to try and keep up with it all.
Exactly,
we've definitely seen that across multiple sites. One of the things we do as part of a reliability piece is look at a reliability maturity assessment, and usually it's break down into 4 stages, with the 4th stage really is where at the bottom there's one section that encompasses IoT and big data and machine learning, but most businesses are barely at 1 or 2.
I know. I think I love that maturity kind of assessment, because it is really interesting to kind of almost as a data model see where they're at in terms of how ready they are for a program to start. And we are seeing repeat same thing across multiple companies.
Jump ahead.
Exactly. And we spoke about, the implementation of condition monitoring in general, because it's quite easy to implement. It's quite easy to get us to come in to go do some testing and find the problems and issues. But generally, what we do find is that people will do that as a bit of a box tick to say that they're doing something. Yeah. And then what they actually find is that their maintenance systems are nowhere near ready to
not supportive enough
to even accommodate the information. I mean, one of the particular sites that, we've been struggling a little bit with, they want to try to go down now a full PM plan as well. But also what they don't understand is that even with the PMs that identify the problems, you still have to do something with that as an action to improve the maintenance and reliability.
And they're not looking at eliminating the root causes.
Yeah, there's no defect elimination there. It's a case of, just find problems. I want you to find things. And, in that whole culture change process is really difficult because we're trying to offer them a better way of doing things. But we know that if they don't take this advice in terms of reliability-centered maintenance point of view, what we're doing is actually not going to add any value.
And the business and those within it have to want to change.
Yeah, I know. And that's I feel like we are battling with a few customers like that at the moment. And I think consistency and resilience is key in this game, even for us. For Maintain to be where it is now, we've had to be so patient in terms of have faith that these results and this philosophy, we know it works. We do know it works. We know it's not easy, but we also have to have faith that the customer at some point is going to get to a turning point of to think, we can't carry on the way that
and I think we've got a lot of customers other than just the ones that are a bit more challenging. We equally have a lot of customers that we have been doing good condition monitoring for 3, 4, 5 years who have now gone reliability. Oh, you can help us with that. We'll do that as well.
So, oh my God, we've been, but to be fair, we've only really been in a position to offer this philosophy and the way of working. I mean, I think we've always had an RCM-centered mindset, but I don't think we've actually necessarily knew how to deliver that necessarily until we did ARP.
There was no plan until then. And that's what ARP or the ART framework that Mobius had developed. It gave all of these tools and techniques that encompass of reliability. It goes, no matter where the business is at on its journey, with no reliability practices to maybe some, it gives a framework on how to go about and achieve that to ensure it's sustainable. The people are brought onto the journey. There's an awareness and a buy-in, because you can't just do it in isolation, and a lot of businesses fail because you've got one guy on site that's like, I love reliability,
and everyone else doesn't understand,
and no one else understands it, and it creates resentment in some places as well.
Yeah, it does. Everyone is against that one particular individual, and we've seen that firsthand. And the intention also is discouraging, because the intention of that reliability engineer is actually caring about the business he works in, and he's caring about the future longevity of that, and knowing if we implement some of these changes, the business can be around for longer, it can produce more effectively, it can earn more money for its shareholders, and therefore be more successful. But you almost get the other side of that completely almost going against it, to almost self-sabotage the longevity of the plant, which is also crazy. But again, if they don't understand what they're doing in terms of stopping it from happening, how are they ever? This is what the culture change is about, and this is where people are so driven to what we're doing and decision making within the businesses that we operate. Do you know what I mean?
So, like, one of the things that I think we've both come across quite frequently, and we were kind of having a bit of a debate together outside about how we feel that the industry is moving. We definitely see a lot of businesses that are now wanting IoT technology, machine learning, AI. They want to see how their business can utilize that. But obviously we go in and go, yeah, but you've got all these red flags over here that you're not worrying about.
But you want to monitor all
of this over here. How do we deal with those sort of things? Like,
it's troublesome, because I had a great conversation with a head of engineering at a particular food manufacturer, and I can't really name any names, but it was interesting, and he was new to the business, right? He'd just come in. His viewpoint was complete 4.0 everywhere, 5.0 everywhere, monitoring on everything, smart manufacturing, everything. That was what he wants. That's where a lot of these systems are being sold to, of what can be achieved, and we can achieve that. We've got the technology to be able to do that now as well. But what was really funny was that before he got involved with that, the engineering manager of the particular site, he wanted to put some online systems on some real continuous monitoring on some real critical compressors and stuff like that. And that actually got blocked by the business to be able to do that. Okay. Which is ironic, because when we're having this conversation, it was a bit like, okay, if we can't even get some monitoring on your most critical assets on one particular site, let alone everything else inside the plant and all this other stuff. Do you know what I mean? How are we ever going to justify what your vision is? And how much head engineering, how much weight do you have to be able to make this decision as well? Can one person change the whole culture of a whole business? I don't know. I don't think it's possible, personally.
And I feel like one of the things we talk a lot in reliability about is that whatever the PM or condition monitoring technique that we choose to do and the frequency that we're doing at has to cost less than accepting of the actual failure. And with the advent of now, a lot of businesses are not just looking at a sensor that wants to collect data, which we've always said we find challenging sometimes because there's no actual benefit to just an increase in frequency of data collection. So because of that, it's one of those things where all this storage of information, and we're seeing more businesses want to collate all that to try and apply AI to it. This is just cost and cost and cost.
And this is the thing, I think, where a lot of people think the cost comes from is the hardware. That's not necessarily the case anymore. We know that electronics is becoming stupidly cheap now. Do you know what I mean? Like some of the manufacturing of chipboards and even sensors is extremely cheap. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Really, on a point of view of how much these things used to cost or what they do now. The cost is in the storage of data, and even we had, even AI and ChatGPT. How many people are using that now has actually increased the energy on this earth in terms of...
And that storage only is going to get more, because what we're seeing is that we're going from wireless sensors, and a lot of the wireless or continuous monitoring systems now are very open. They can send their data to wherever they want. A lot of the bigger businesses are looking into how they can leverage AI and machine learning. But one of the things we actually, Jason Trans talked about it in Barcelona about AI and how this is moving forward. But ChatGPT is very effective in the whole asking of questions because it has the whole internet, the World Wide Web as its data source to pull from.
A lot of information,
and eventually we want to be in a place where we can utilize that within a maintenance plant, but it needs lots of data to pull from. It's going to need all of the condition monitoring data, but it also needs all the maintenance history, but it also needs all the process data. So a lot of these businesses are now looking at historian systems to be able to pull all that information across, and then AI platforms to process it.
How far are we off that though? So even, say for, because a lot of companies where we go to have sort of great history, you could probably utilize that and use it. But I mean, a large percentage, some don't even have CMMS systems. So say if they started now and there's like, right, if we log all of our maintenance actions and they did it properly and they had all that log and then they start collecting data, how long would it take for them to actually really understand? Because, even look at some reliability studies of like mean time to failure, mean time, before failure, and all these type of metrics. They require a lot of history behind them for you to be able to get accurate results, right? How long would it take for a company from scratch to be able to have this information before it could be utilized useful?
I mean,
you're talking at least 5 years, aren't you?
I think in my head, even a business with lots of information and lots of data, the overall program of AI and machine learning, I feel like history tells us that whatever time period we feel it's going to be shorter, especially with technology. I feel like it was only a few years ago that we were like, I think AI is going to be 10 years away, and now we're already thinking about 5 years away. So
the time gets smaller.
It gets smaller, right?
Yeah.
And so either way, a business ultimately, it's why AI and machine learning is on the end of the reliability maturity assessment, because to capitalize on that, you've got to have
all the other
good data. You've got to have good CMMS systems.
Also, you've got to have good data. You can't just have loads of crap data in there. Do you know what I mean?
Well, this is then the argument I keep having in my head, which is that one of the things we spoke in Barcelona was that AI, for it to be able to work and in its low level form, is it's got to be able to look at, CMMS data and vibration data and coordinate that to put an output. But we say, the data's got to be good. But what stops the AI then being able to evaluate whether the data is good
and comprehend whether
it's,
then obviously filter and screen out poor data models as well. Yeah.
So what stops the AI? Like if the AI sees that vibration has decreased on this asset, there's 2 pumps. This one's decreased, this one hasn't, and the work order has been said that they changed the motor on the other machine. What's to say that the AI can't statistically review that and go, actually, I think they've put the work order on the wrong machine.
Very clever. Yeah, but I mean, again, though, but you say all this. Are we going way too far with all this that we need to? Because I think me and you also know, even if we do good PMs and we do good strategies, right? And we really look at failure mode analysis. We do good for me because we do good criticalities. We keep it effective. We keep it simple, and we keep it driven, right?
Yeah.
We go across a plant. We do all these great things. We understand exactly where to focus our attention. Then we do the right kind of for failure mode analysis. Then we put the right PMs in place. We do the right CBM practices for them failure modes and everything like that. We then choose the right monitoring systems for the criticality. We don't have to go too far into it. You know, if monthly VA is good enough for these certain assets, we do that because we know that's worked for an amount of time. As long as the culture's right within the business, do we really need to go to the extent of where all this is going? Do you think that we're getting kind of almost sold into this kind of AI revolution when the value's not actually in that? The values and the strategies of what we've actually proven before.
I think it is that, being that AI is the buzz and it's the thing that's going on right now, I think if you're this is my opinion, if you are a business and that you have all of your reliability things in place, you've got good maintenance strategies, the business all is on board, you are considered world-class reliability. AI, machine learning, and everything that offers is the froth on the top of the beer.
It just gives you a little bit more.
And if you can capitalize into that, the benefits you can do is huge. But it is at the top of the froth, and you've got to have
you only get that benefit when you've really done all the strategies.
Exactly.
Because what I feel a lot of companies are doing, they're coming into this tech revolution. They've not done the basics. They've not done the strategies. They haven't got the culture right. And they're trying to blanket approach AI solution or data model on top without really knowing where it adds value.
What they're effectively doing is those businesses that are world-class reliability leaders, they will be able to put, and it might take them 5 years because they're trying to work out the best solution to do. And one of our customers is looking at this right now is how can they do this for the future? They will massively capitalize on that. The AI system will probably, in the machine learning and the sensors, they're not blanketing sensors on because they're waiting because they know the technology is advancing rapidly. Or what they're actually thinking is they're looking at moving all of the assets onto fixed sensors because they know that the fixed sensor hardware has been stable for many, many years. 100 millivolt per G, we always use it.
Yeah, we've installed them.
So it's very stable. And we're looking at the fact that, if whether it's an MVX system or whatever, which can do more than just vibration, if that hardware does evolve, usually the hardware evolution of that is maybe 5, 6, 7, 8 year cycles, if not longer. So they're not going to be like constantly outdating themselves, but they will benefit from AI. But what I see is happening is that a lot of businesses are looking at that reliability maturity assessment and all those things that give good reliability, good maintenance strategies, good onboarding, good condition monitoring. They see the AI as that solves my problem.
Yeah.
If I do that, I solved all my problems. And so they're jumping and going, I'm going to put sensors on everything. It's going to monitor all my machines. I'm going to put it into AI and it's going to tell me everything I need to do. And I'm never going to have a failure. I'm going to be well on top of it. But you and I both know that it doesn't detect all the failures. If the data is poor, and so they're just seeing it as that's the solution. And some of them are seeing it as the solution as a quick, I'm just going to do it. And some of them don't realise there's all this.
And I think you have to have the clarity behind it to realise it's not. But the problem is, I feel like there's less people that have the clarity than do.
Yes.
You've got a lot of data companies, you've got a lot of people in IT that probably are very clever people, but don't necessarily be in our industry and understand how machines work. Look how many years experience that we've had, like even you at British Sugar, me in the repair centre at Eric's, for how many years seeing failures happen and all that experience. You can't just you can't just AI that. You can't that experience has been time served.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And it's interesting because when we was in Texas Accelerate, we was actually had the similar conversation, okay?
Yeah.
Because we're speaking about how big data and how the model, what they want to do is try to get all that sensors and go into email and everything. But I was kind of, not a debate in it as well, but I said, well, how do you really understand based off failure mode though? And kind of a guy kind of looked at me and I was like, you need to have people that have had experience of understanding how things can actually fail for you to really make this effective.
Yeah.
How do you build that into your AI models? Do you know what I mean? And it was a question that kind of stumped them a little bit, you know what I mean? And it was interesting, the reaction, because these guys that we're talking to are very clever guys. They're probably far more clever and been in the industry longer than me. But because they hadn't had that exposure to that side of failure and machines and all the stuff that we've seen as well, and all the mistakes that we've made, you know, like, how do you learn from seeing a result that wasn't really going to go the way that you wanted to, and learning from that? But that whole conversation was based around the idea of big data. But when I had that question, it did pose a question of, oh crap, you know, there is that to consider.
Yeah, and I think, like, as a real, not plea, but like just for businesses that are in these sort of spaces, I think if you look at the money that these businesses, and some of it is scary, that are willing to just plow into AI and machine learning, and if you took that
and you
applied it to reliability,
because reliability is about being effective. It's not about being efficient. It's about saying, how can I utilize all these tools to be effective as possible with the least amount of money and resource?
Yeah,
that's what reliability really is about, right? And I just feel we're missing a point where everyone's going towards this direction. It does cost a lot of money to have that model, but without having the real basis and foundation of it.
Yeah.
And this is why these podcasts are so important, because I'm not saying that it's not the answer in the future. And I'm not saying
it's going to be amazing when
it's going to be huge when it does. And I think we've really seen that. And we've also seen companies that are almost ready for it. You know, they've done all the great things. They've got themselves to a point where now, like, where do we get better? Because everyone wants to improve. So when you've done them things, it's like, where's the froth? That froth we was talking about. And I do think it costs more money to get, when you're up the top there, if you want to get that froth and them little small improvements, it does cost more money than it would cost you to get from a lower place to a higher place. Yeah. So, but if that money has a good return on investment, of course, we're going to do it. And also, we all want to improve.
Yeah.
We don't just want to get to the 98%. We want to get to 99.
Yeah.
We don't want to get to 99. We want to get to 100. You know what I mean? There's always that little wiggle room. And I think we always, as human beings and as continuous improvement, got to think of that. But the problem is we're trying to get to 99 and we're not even at 70.
Yeah.
And the 70 to 80 is the bit where we need to focus on.
Yeah.
And if we just do a good strategy and we can spend far less money getting there with the right effective strategy, we can get to where we need to be.
And if you don't get that first initial bit of percentage right, everything that you're spending hundreds of £1,000s in an AI
has an impact.
Is not going to have the impact.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, very interesting.
Or what will happen is that the money will be, what we're seeing at the moment in a lot of the bigger companies is that they are being more hesitant to it. They are being more approachable to it, and they're doing a lot of testing. But all of that testing and using this system and trialing this AI platform or this historian, you know, this is license costs. And we're talking about one of the customers I've been to last week. You know, they're testing, they've got a small team that are the digital lighthouse that they're looking into all of this. You know, they're testing out licenses that are £100,000 a year license costs. All looks really good, but we need to get this bit done first.
I know,
because
the basics. Because that same particular customer, you look at the application you was looking at last week.
Yeah.
Perfect example, isn't it? You've got a whole team of people, right? Which costs money, right? Not even that. They're testing these licenses out that cost all this money. Then on the actual reality of the plant running, you've got the cooling tower. Do you know what I mean?
The history of this is
I'll let you explain.
Yeah. So
this is a perfect. Do you know what though? Yeah. This is a perfect example.
It is.
You know,
but for us, we're doing the ARP. We've done the training. They're doing the ART. They've got a reliability team, and we're making some incredible
great movement
at the moment. And the whole business is on board all the way up to the site director. So. But fundamentally, they do have a digital team. And I do think for a business this size, it's probably worth them looking into. But the overall global business has not got a focus on the reliability within the group. We're doing it independently, right? Whereas I think that a business this size should have a VP of reliability, and they should be putting focus on it, because what that means, that they have that for the digitalization bit that they're looking into, but because they don't hear what that's effectively mean for this customer is they don't have actually any criticality assessment yet. Their most critical asset on site, that if they lose it, is their cooling tower, and would shut the entire site down.
A complete shutdown.
They have no condition monitoring on it whatsoever, even though we said 3 years ago that we need to fix sensors on it. which they've been like, yeah, we should have missed that. The cooling tower motor is generated a noise level, which has resulted in a noise level complaint, which meant they've had to put a plywood scaffold wall up at the cost of 22 grand. They've had to hire a cooling tower in because they can't, there's too much risk in changing the motor and damaging the coupling. So they don't want to do that. So they've had to hire a cooling tower, minimum 8 weeks, 11 grand a week. So we're over £100,000 right now.
Jesus Christ.
Right? To this cooling tower. And there's no real maintenance strategy on it at all. There's not just condition monitoring. There's nothing else that is in place to ensure. Then we go up and look at it yesterday and find out that it's a lubricatable motor. It's not sealed for life, and they've never lubricated it ever. It's a 12.
And you can't. I suppose it's a cooling tower, so you can't lubricate it
without grease lines.
Without grease lines, yeah.
It's a specialist motor. It's 12 pole.
It's a 12-pole motor as well.
But then
and I tell you, they are not common.
Yeah,
you know.
And so, which is part of the reason why they've had to wait so long for a spare. And then they retrofitted several years ago an inverter, but didn't follow they changed management. But because they didn't have the expertise in the business, they didn't realise how the motor wasn't inverter duty
and how that
and what that impactful.
Yeah.
But equally, because it's on an inverter, I said to them last week, I said, you've waited so long for this 12-pole motor, you'd need to have looked into the efficiencies of it, but you could have just got a 6-pole and slowed it down, which would have reduced their lead time on their motor by like a third. Obviously, the efficiencies and stuff, and I'm not a motor expert, but
it could have been done.
And that cooling tower is one of 3 supercritical assets within the plant that we've looked at that have no maintenance strategy whatsoever. I said it to the two of you guys, the reliability engineers, and the technical manager was in the room at the time. I said, just remember, the way I'm going to say this is a bit nuts, but just remember, your most critical asset on site, your maintenance strategy is run to fail.
But this is a perfect example. It's a perfect example. We've got teams spending hundreds of thousands, AI models, whatever, and you look at the basics, the real basics of stuff that's not difficult to be able to identify and do, and it's not being done. It is now because, you know...
It is, but it's cost them £100,000.
Exactly. But this is the thing. If we did that strategy 3 or 4 or 5 years ago and we did it properly, the problem is as well, people don't really necessarily care until it's a problem. And this is life in general. Do you know what I mean? A little niggle on your car, oh, just leave it. You know, you hear it. That's the first sign, even for us as people. And it gets worse. It gets worse. It's like a crack in your windscreen. When it happens, you find a tiny little dent. And do you know what? I'll be all right. And it'll probably cost you about 50 quid to go to Autoglass to get it changed. All right. But over time, you forget about it. It gets slightly bigger. And then what happens? You go over a pothole and it's crack. Then you're like, oh, I need to get it changed. And that's the perfect analogy that we find in reliability all the time. But the thing is, we're not just dealing with a windscreen here. We're dealing with critical assets that have a huge impact if they fail, right?
Yep.
And we have to get ahead of the game. We can't carry on in this industry the way that we are in this reactive way.
And that cooling tower, as a prime example, to install fixed sensors on it is about £2,000. 4 sensors, 2 on each motor, minimal cost. To actually develop the maintenance strategy and to do that piece of work is just a bit of time. It's sitting down, going through the strategy and working out, have we mitigated the risks and put controls for these failure modes to ensure we have a level of control on this asset for the failures that we have.
Yeah, I know that's kind of doing some Famika stuff, really.
Yeah, RTM, using the techniques, but also what I've said to the guys bigger than that, and this is where reliability just broadens even further, that people don't understand the full concept all the time, and why we do a lot of training around it is, yes, okay, we've got that in particular, but now we're looking at, okay, could we move the motor in the future over to sealed for life? That would eliminate the potential risk of a contamination issue with lubricant or the lubricant running out. We can look at doing that.
Standardise the motor.
Can we do that?
We have a spare.
Yeah.
Maybe both.
We're going to be creating, when we do the job, the SOPs all at the same time in order to make sure that is all documented for that asset. We're looking at all of the other elements, but one of the things that the result of this
even having a spare.
Yeah.
Like, do you know what I mean? Like, you know,
one of the things that has resulted off of the back of this, though, is, and we're now looking at it on another asset, is that they've had to modify the pipe work to allow for the temporary cooling tower to be piped in. And that modification is now going to be permanent. So we can't prevent every single failure from happening. We can try our hardest, and it's not always cost justifiable. But in the future, if there was an issue, we can easily pipe that cooling tower back in. We can have a temporary cooling tower. But that's something that businesses should be looking at in their design stages, which is when they're evaluating. We've got a major critical asset on site cooling towers. It's extremely unlikely that it's going to fail, and we're going to put all the control measures. We're going to monitor the asset. But even then, we may miss something. So, and in that early design stages, when we've got the maximum influence and it's the lowest cost, it'll cost hardly anything to install some pipe flanges and a valve that is always shut, but would allow a temporary cooling tower to be fixed.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing with most design stages. At that stage, it doesn't cost a lot to make changes.
No.
But the problem is, I think a lot of even manufacturers as well, but not even at businesses, because if you think about it, a business has a requirement to be able to have a cooling tower and needs a function, right? And needs to say, right, we need to do this, and we need a cooling tower to cool down whatever we need to create what we need. So we need to find a supplier that's able to do that. It's down to the business to be able to identify what is required also to make our life easier should any issues happen. And the problem is, mate, a lot of the time, that's not thought about. We've had a new customer, right, that we've got. They've just got a whole new dust plant, okay? And they've not considered anything since they actually put it in. And the problem is the specification for the people that come in to actually supply the equipment, none of it's been stated of what they want. They just said, we want this.
Yeah.
They've not actually stipulated out, we want, better access. We want to make sure that we can, have a design where we can actually,
balance the fan
and sort it out. Yeah, exactly. And how many times have you seen that? We've had to cut holes and retrofit, certain things to get to the fans, And again, I think some manufacturers, are
a bit more forward
thinking and have that as a standard in their design process. But the thing is, as well, it's down to you as the actual company to ensure that the maintainability of these assets are as good as they can come initially. Yep. The problem is when you have to cut holes in fans when you're down because your fan is out of balance hideously, it costs so much time and money to do that in terms of just downtime. And not even that, you're now making a modification to something that probably shouldn't have been, done in the first place. So I think it is
there's
that.
all these things, and then we've got digitalization. Let's put sensors on everything.
I know, and I think sometimes the solutions are very simple. I don't see it as complicated. I look at this sometimes. I think this is common sense, right? It generally is. These things are not difficult, but when you do look at it on a day-to-day basis, and us across, we've got a lot of customers now, and we found this as we went. It's like, why did they not do that? Why did they do this? Why did they not think about that?
Yeah.
And I don't know what it is. I don't know whether it's because they're in it and they get busy, and maybe we could have the same analogy of our business, right? When we get busy, we miss the obvious things maybe. But I think that's why always, if you can have an outside perspective, if you can be open-minded to where you're really going wrong, you can use data to be able to justify it.
We say it in the ARP course, it's unknown unknowns. If you don't know that you don't know, if you're not aware that the amount of, like when we did ARPE with the guys that I was talking with, this cooling tower, it's not that they're incompetent engineers.
No.
And they are smart people. But they don't know that there's a better way of doing it. They don't know what this is. They don't know the process about it. And it's the reason why we do the podcast. It's the reason why we share on LinkedIn. I had a chat with someone the other day. This isn't a vanity project for you and I just because we like seeing our faces on there. I hate it. Like, Will watches all the videos. I don't like watching it.
I quite enjoy watching the podcast, but I don't know Will does.
I can't.
But the drive for it, and the real drive for it is the awareness, because I think what we see on a day-to-day basis, we understand that there's still a huge amount of culture to move, and I think if we don't move faster, we're going to have problems in the future.
And I
generally do. This is not me being like pedantic or unrealistic. This is just our experiences based upon how many sites we've seen.
I've said before, like you say, we're trying to shift this massive amount of culture, and it's widespread in the UK. It's not just like individual sites, and it's not just the UK. It's probably worldwide.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
And we have the biggest impact and the most amount of voice on here and on LinkedIn to be able to do that. And I think that all that's going to happen is as if businesses don't start to adopt reliability and don't start to look at changing their culture, one of their competitors will, and they will start to fall behind, or that they're just going to constantly waste money. And the amount of even some of the values that we talk about, like the amount of money that is wasted from not laser aligning things. It's a stupid figure. It's millions of pounds.
It's millions, and it's the small things that make the big differences, right? And I think what a perfect way to close a podcast, and as that food for thought, is within this huge information pool we've got. Let's not drown in the information, right? Whilst we're suffocating for wisdom. I think that's a good little saying within that. Okay, so guys, thank you for tuning in. What a great discussion. And we'll definitely be back soon with some more content. And thank you for tuning in.